Hi, Daniel, Drew, and George. Whoever's going to present, make sure you have the ability to share your PowerPoint.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for bearing with us with our slight technical delay. I'll let our fabulous alumna partner, Allison Dwyer-Selden, introduce this talk and this series before we get started for the evening.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. As you just heard, my name is Allison Dwyer-Selden. I'm the current president of the Charlottesville Highland William and Mary alumni leadership team here in Charlottesville. And I'm also a member of the 50 Years of William and Mary's Highland celebration team. So on behalf of both of those groups, we welcome you. That 50 years of celebration of William and Mary's Highland is the reason we are here together this evening. William and Mary acquired the Highland property, then known as Ashlawn, in 1974, and it opened its gates to the public in 1975. Highland, which was the name Monroe gave the property, has transformed from a local tourist attraction in the Charlottesville area into a thriving research site. This cherished property uncovers stories of the many diverse individuals who contributed to the success of the land over the years, from Native Americans through colonial America and enslaved workers. Today, the property serves as a hub for interdisciplinary research, exploring both the human narratives of its past as well as its environmental, archaeological, and anthropological studies. This jewel of William and Mary provides a Western site in the state for students and faculty to study collaboratively and for all to tour. And I think tonight you're going to get a really good sense of just that. You can see why we decided that 50 years of William and Mary's stewardship of Highland deserved a celebration, one that has included several events and will include several more. We began with a lecture by Dr. Sarah Von Harper, the executive director. I just lost my script, beg your pardon, in April. And so I will wing it from here. And then in September, we had a wonderful lecture and a hike with William and Mary's own Dr. Chuck Bailey. Those of you that are local William and Mary alumni, you will be receiving, if you have not already, your invitation to Yule Log this year, which is an annual event. However, this year it will be at Highland with an honored guest, President Rowe will be joining us. In February, we will culminate our 50 years with a talk by the IIC group. Again, we will probably have the experience of faculty and students. And once again, we'll get a wonderful picture of research and how important and special this property is. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Highland staff now to introduce our topic for this evening, our esteemed speaker and her students for this evening. And again, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Allison. My name's Laura Musser. I'm the manager of education programs at Highland. And I just wanted to insert a couple of housekeeping items before we start. This meeting is being recorded for the 50th anniversary, but never fear, if you are not speaking and you don't have your camera on, you will not be recorded. So if you would like to remain not recorded, just don't turn your camera on. We will have a conversation this evening for about 40 minutes because I want to be mindful of our stop time at 8 and leave some time for questions at the end here. But now I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker and her students for this conversation. What Feeding the People, What Does Food Have to Do with Heritage, which will be presented jointly by Highland's public historian, Dr. Lisa Armstrong, and her students, George White, Drew Ball, and Daniel Lingle, who will be leading us in this rich exploration of food and culture. Dr. Armstrong is currently William and Mary's History Department and a public historian here at Highland. She earned her PhD in applied anthropology with a concentration in heritage studies from the University of South Florida, go Bulls, where her ethnographic work examined racialized spaces over time in the historically Black community of Carver City, Lincoln Gardens in Tampa, Florida. Her research focuses on race, age, gender, sexuality, culture, history, historiography, heritage, slavery, and segregated spaces. This year at Highland, Dr. Armstrong has spearheaded 2 community programs centered around food and heritage and reparative agricultural experiences for both youth and community members, while simultaneously guiding students through coursework and independent research projects. She will also be giving us a little peek at her exemplary teaching tonight as her students will precede her in this presentation. Please join me in welcoming George, Drew, and Daniel, who will be sharing with us about okra, after which point Dr. Armstrong will join to mediate the conversation. I will ask that if you want to drop questions in the chat, you're more than welcome to, but I will leave it up to the students and Dr. Armstrong's discretion of how they want to engage with questions. So take it away. We're ready for you.
Okay.
And I'll pin
Thank
you
you.
guys. I'll pin you guys too. Okay. I see Daniel.
Can everyone see the screen right now? The shared screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is that good now? Just want to check, make sure. All right, thank you. So thank you to everyone at Highland and to Professor Armstrong for her feedback in making this presentation and for having us tonight. And today we want to talk about a specific food as it pertains to Highland slavery in the African world, and that is okra and its connection to the aforementioned topics. So before we start on talking about okra itself, I want to introduce who we are. So first, I am Drew Ball. I am a senior here at William & Mary, and I am a kinesiology major here.
I'm Daniel Lingle. I'm a junior here, and I am an economics major.
And I am George White, junior government major with a history minor.
And so, as many of you may know, Highland was a very robust agricultural plantation throughout much of the 18th and early 19th centuries. In 1810, the 1810 Albemarle County, Virginia census, it showed that Monroe was one of the county's largest slave owners at the time, with 49 enslaved adults living at Highland.
Of the more than 15,000 households in the country that year, only 14 had larger slave inventories, including Thomas Jefferson's at Monticello, which held the most at 147.
And Highland's enslaved population included both field workers and skilled workers. So that's like blacksmiths, carpenters, masons, and house servants like valets or maids. But the staff also included a cook with multiple assistants, which we will talk about later.
And so, as we mentioned, Monroe's Highland plantation relied heavily on enslaved labor for its agriculture, and plantation records from the era show that enslaved cooks commonly prepared foods using African heritage crops like okra, cowpeas, bene, which is sesame, and greens.
Okra was grown in Virginia gardens for both consumption and medicinal uses.
Yeah, and then dishes like soups, stews, and gumbos, which kind of all originated from African cooking traditions, were common in enslaved quarters at that time, and then were sometimes adopted in the kitchens of plantations and enjoyed by the plantation owner's family as well. So that's kind of how that diffusion happened. Yeah, so how did okra get here? What are the origins? It is believed to originate in East Africa, excuse me, most likely in Ethiopia or the Sudan region, where it was first domesticated thousands of years ago. From there, it very quickly spread kind of northward along the Nile Valley into the broader Islamic world through trade and migration mostly. And it eventually reached North Africa and the Middle East. And then by around 1500, it had become well established across then West Africa, where it became a staple ingredient, and again, in stews, soups. And it was central to daily diets and kind of cultural identity. You can change the slide, Drew. And then the plant crossed the Atlantic Ocean during the transatlantic slave trade. And it arrived in America kind of through several different routes. It was brought or either brought or hidden by slaves, enslaved Africans. It was also a ship provision where it was used as a hearty and nutritious food by the people on board, and then it made its way over that way. And then once in the New World, it thrived immediately, especially due to the hot and humid climate, which I will talk about more in a second. But its adaptability and kind of ties to the African culinary tradition helped it become a very key ingredient in Southern cooking as we know it today, particularly, again, in dishes like gumbo that bear African influence, which I know Drew will talk about later on. But it's known as a southern crop or a heat crop. Some people refer to it as a heat crop, but it thrives in the heat. It's a warm season crop. It grows best in hot, humid conditions, which is very typical, as we all know, of the American South's long summers. It's also very tolerant to droughts. It allows its roots allow it to withstand the South's frequently dry spells and kind of fluctuating rainfall. And it also has a very extended growing season. The southern climate provides a very long frost-free period, which enables multiple harvests of it, right? So you're able to harvest a lot of okra at once.
So during slavery in the American South, those that were enslaved were often given the leftover or called undesirable parts of an animal or certain crops on farms because slaveholders saved the best cuts of meats and the best products for themselves. Despite these conditions, enslaved cooks use these scraps to turn dishes into flavorful and nourishing meals, which became Southern staples and symbols of hope and resilience. There are plenty of other foods like okra that were cheap and made from almost nothing. So I'm going to talk about some of those examples. The first one being pig's feet, which was given to enslaved workers as plantation owners kept choice cuts of meats for themselves. These were typically braised or slow cooked until tender and then seasoned with spices and other oils and things like that to bring out the flavor in them and create a hearty meal. Over time, this became a Southern comfort food, often served at family gatherings or special occasions all throughout the South. Another example would be chitlins, which is seen there on the right. These are made from pork intestines and other undesirable parts of an animal. Cooks typically cleaned, boiled, and seasoned them with spices and onions and anything else they could find that they could use, and again, it would create another hearty dish. Even today, chitlins are still served at holiday meals in some African American households, connecting generations through food. And the last example that I have is collard greens. These are brought from African food traditions where similar leafy greens were common. In the South, collard greens were often simmered with pork scraps or ham hocks or anything else, adding flavor and protein to an inexpensive meal. Beyond being healthy and filling, these meals became a staple of soul food and a comfort dish deeply tied to community and family. Collards are also a great example of African influence shaping Southern cuisine that's still loved today. These foods left a lasting cultural meaning and legacy. These foods reflect the resilience of those that were enslaved and their ability to make the best of what little they had, using seasoning, slow cooking, and creativity with undesired ingredients. Over time, these dishes became part of American food culture, not just as a survival food, but as celebrated parts of Southern cooking. Today, they serve as a reminder of resilience, history, and the power of food and to preserve identity across generations. Although there are many foods like okra, we believe that okra has the most standing legacy throughout history, and today we'll be focusing on okra as we feel as it has best stood the test of time and preserved the stories and traditions of those that were enslaved.
So I want to ask a question of how okra is a part of enslaved and African culture. So okra is a very important crop as it pertains to African enslaved culture. First, many African people, and George already kind of mentioned this, but many African people who had been enslaved tied the seeds of crops from Africa in their homeland into their hair before they got on the boats to go to America. And so as they were taken to an unknown land, they're taken by unknown people and they're separated from everyone and everything that they know and that they love. And they're just looking to find a way to comfort themselves and to find comfort in the crops at their home. It was a very important thing to do. So these crops not only nourish their bodies, but they also nourish the minds and the souls of people who were going to be living in unfamiliar lands. So okra is one of the most popular crops that was brought within the hair of and brought over from Africa in general. And this is because it spanned most of Africa's west coast at the time because of the similar climate. And so in Africa, okra was mostly used in stews and other soup-like dishes, which carried over into enslaved communities throughout the American South through things like gumbo and similar stews. So okra was also used in many traditional medicinal practices. It was important as a medicine as well as a crop. Many practices are passed down through the enslaved communities, and these are practices that originated from Africa, which serves as a connection to their homeland and their ancestors. So these practices and recipes are generally passed down orally, not written, which is how most culture of enslaved individuals had to be passed down, just due to a lack of resources provided and a lack of education. Both the recipes for dishes and the medicinal practices are examples of just how the culture within enslaved communities had to be passed down. And okra was a link. The crop itself was a link to the homeland of these enslaved individuals. It was one of the only remaining connections to their homeland's food, culture, practices, and whatnot. So okra isn't just a food. It's not just a crop. It's not just an ingredient for medical treatments. It represents an important connection to the past, both for enslaved communities of the past and modern descendant communities today. So okra's connection to slavery and enslaved foodways. So many enslaved people had their own gardens within their homes that they were using to grow okra as well as other crops that they were using for themselves, not to for any business practices. So okra was typically not grown for plantation owners to sell and eat. Sometimes it was adopted later, but that was not the original purpose of okra being brought to the Americas and grown. So it's important to note that because of limited food provisions, enslaved individuals grew accustomed to not wasting food. As such, okra was not just popular due to its fast growing and natural resistance to pests, as George mentioned, but it also became important because every part of it could be used. So first, the pods, which are the main body of the okra plant, were used within many dishes, both for the value of okra as a crop itself and for the value of okra to thicken the dish, which was the base of the first gumbos that later spread throughout the South. And this fact is mostly supported by the fact that the name gumbo is derived from the West African name for okra. So the thickening of dishes was very important for enslaved individuals to be able to make the small amounts of food provisions that they were given remain more filling. And gumbo is the ultimate example of a food item that was born from scraps or leftover food items, because it's surmised that the idea for gumbo originally came because it was born out of a dish that they had to use leftover parts of food portions for. And next, the seeds of the okra plant are used for coffee as a replacement for coffee, which is shown in this letter here, which highlights how during the Civil War they had to use okra as a replacement for coffee due to rationing, which here is a small little picture of okra, what it kind of would look like when you would use the okra seeds as a replacement for coffee. And the scarcity of food resources was an everyday struggle for enslaved individuals, much like what the letter outlined for the scarcity of rations. And finally, the leaves of the okra plant were used for medicinal purposes, as well as a leafy green that is similar to spinach or collard greens, which this again shows the desire of enslaved individuals to not waste any food. And many of the enslaved individuals came from areas of Africa with a climate similar to the southern United States. So they are very familiar. They were very familiar with the kinds of diseases and ailments that would be raising up within these areas. So okra was used within these parts of Africa and later America, and it was used to prevent kidney stones, to soothe skin conditions, aid digestion, and generally improve cardiovascular health, which this speaks to the traditions that were passed down mostly orally through family and communities of enslaved individuals and their ancestors, because this is how the knowledge and techniques that originated from Africa in enslaved communities got to America.
Yeah, so how does okra itself connect to Highland? As you've already heard by both of my co-presenters here, enslaved Africans introduced and cultivated okra on southern plantations like Highland beginning in about the 18th century. And it was grown in Highland kitchen gardens, provisional grounds, and communal plots. And it became so popular so quickly because it blended West African culinary techniques with kind of New World ingredients. And as I mentioned before, plantation families ended up adopting okra through dishes such as gumbo, prepared by enslaved cooks. And at James Monroe's Highland, okra became a part of daily foodways through labor and then the knowledge of the enslaved community. And its presence at Highland really reflects the continuity of African agriculture as well as cuisine despite forced displacement.
So okra still has a lasting impact and significance, especially in Southern food today. So from a cultural and historical aspect, okra is seen as a living link to African food traditions brought to the Americas by those that were enslaved. Today, okra can be seen throughout the South in many different ways. The first one being fried, which is likely the most common way to serve okra. It's also served pickled, stewed, grilled, roasted as well. And you still see okra everywhere in the South, especially, and also in Creole and Caribbean cooking as well, which shows how people held on to and adapted to these food traditions over time. Growing and cooking okra today is a way to honor the creativity and survival of people who kept their culture alive through food. Okra shows up all throughout the country at family gatherings, cookouts, and cultural festivals, reminding people where those dishes came from and what they represent. Culinary importance, okra is now used all over the world. It's a super versatile food, and it's used in a ton of different ways. As I mentioned, fried, breaded, pickled, stewed, or curried, or grilled or roasted. And those are used in many different ways, and also by many different people. It's also important as a nutritional and agricultural in that sense. Okra is very healthy and sustainable. It's super high in fiber, vitamin C, and antioxidants as well. It's great for blood sugar control and also used in some diabetic diets. And it grows well in hot and dry climates, as I believe George mentioned before. So it can be farmed all throughout the South or in various different places. And farmers like it because it's super low maintenance, it's drought resistance, and it can play a big role in the future of farming and food security as well. From a social and personal perspective, there's definitely some mixed reviews when it comes to okra. Some love it for its flavor and its texture and how it thickens up soups like gumbo, that was mentioned before. And others can't stand it because it can be slimy, but that's part of the charm of it for a lot of people, that people have various different opinions on it, but it's still around. The debate for preference shows the cultural difference that okra represents, as some love it and some hate it. Lastly, there's a large global presence and symbolism with okra as a food. It's eaten across 5 different continents, which really shows how far it's traveled and how far different cultures have changed it to make it their own. It's often seen as a symbol of resilience and survival, connecting back to the history of the slave trade and cultural blending. More than just food, it represents heritage, adaptation, and identity.
Yep, and then last thing here, just kind of wrapping up. So this is great. When we first started this, Professor Armstrong told us that we should go watch this before we did anything else. And I very much enjoyed this episode. This is called High on the Hog. It's a Netflix documentary. The first episode, I believe it's the first episode, is almost exclusively about okra, which was really cool. It kind of shows okra's African origins and just how enslaved Africans carried the seeds, the knowledge, and the cooking techniques from Africa to the Americas. It also highlights okra as kind of a link of cultural survival, as we've all mentioned. And it's appeared in West African dishes that became staples in multiple different countries, not just America. It also features Black chefs and historians explaining how kind of the historical preparation has evolved over time, and also how that preparation today reflects the direct African culinary continuity over time. And it also presents okra as a symbol of resilience and identity, which really just demonstrates how African food traditions have shaped Southern and American cuisine in general. And that is all we have. We just wanted to thank everyone for listening, and really just to say a huge thank you to Dr. Armstrong for all of her advice and all of her support.
Thank you. That was great. I always hate when I have to follow such a seriously well put together act, but I'm going to do my best to keep you as entertained as George, Daniel, and Drew have. We will be open for questions with George, Daniel, and Drew after my discussion, so I'm going to try to get us through that kind of quickly and give everyone time to ask questions for anyone that's presenting today. So let me share my screen. Give me just a second here. All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay. All right, awesome. So good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Dr. Lisa Armstrong, and I'm an applied anthropologist with a degree from the University of South Florida. I use an anthropological lens, often the theories and methods when I teach, when I do research, and when I engage with communities. So a lot of what you will see will reflect a lot of anthropological methods and ways of seeing and understanding heritage. So I appreciate you all joining us this evening for this talk, Feeding the People. And we're going to jump right into it. So this year, William and Mary committed to advance sustainability. And here at Highland, we've been very excited to join them in celebrating the Year of the Environment. In this evening's talk, I'm excited to share a discussion related to Highland, the environment, heritage, community, food, and some of the ways we've engaged with the community at Highland. The concentration of heritage in academic and historical spaces include many robust definitions of the term heritage. A few are shared here on the screen, and the way some others see it, and I see it, heritage and identity are often bound to one's sense of belonging, place, and space. I define heritage as a continuum of joint moments and disjunctures related to community identities, specific times, ideas, peoples, places, traditions, and performance that maintain an ongoing relationship between the past and the present. Shared authority at Highland represents a longstanding collaboration and relationship between William and Mary's Highland staff and descendants regarding interpreting the stories of those who were enslaved laborers at Highland. And those conversations have also contributed to many descendant vision themes for community programs and even a journey to Florida that I'll talk more about shortly. Some of William and Mary's students, in addition to George, Daniel, and Drew, have made significant contributions to making those visions tangible experiences at Highland. This year in my classroom, I asked students to think, write, and share about what comes to mind when they think of American history and their own heritage. What I gained from them was insight into the uniqueness of what America looks like to them and how their experiences are heavily influenced by their family backgrounds and societies ranging from the Americas to places around the world, including included in their descriptions were mentions of traditional languages, meals, and celebrations that they've experienced, started, transformed, and hope to carry forward into the future. Outside of my classroom, some of what comes to mind when thinking about American heritage is the lessons that they may have learned about, that people may have learned about Native Americans and their indigenous heritage to the land, or people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, and others who are seen as the founders of this country as we know it today. As for me, and as it relates to this discussion, what comes to mind is those who were enslaved at Highland by the Monroe family. Particularly those people come to mind for me because they include my 5th and 4th great-grandparents, Eve Dudley, great uncle William, and the other grandmother, Hannah, who were displaced from their home in the state of Virginia and sold to Florida in 1828. Once my grandparents, along with a few other enslaved families that were also sold by the Monroes to Florida, resettled in the Deep South, the state became and remained home for generations of their descendants to this very day. Some of the descendants are pictured here on the doorsteps of the Casabianca Church in Monticello, Florida, which some of the enslaved individuals helped to found. While community ties were severed through through the transition, what remained was many of the food traditions and the oral histories. They passed down through rich oral history and observation traditions such as how to grow food, preserve food, and prepare soul food, cuisines that are packed with love, memories, and flavor. For many African Americans, food is so powerfully connected to love, family, community, and stability, and a good time that when it's prepared by the proper hands, people are sure to come. One example is the 2025 summer pilot youth camp called the Highland Education Project. The summer camp was envisioned by the council, developed and led by Highland staff, and supported by the Institute for Integrative Conservation's 2025 student-led conservation research program, where my students Sage and Ileana worked with everyone to pilot the summer program. The pilot summer program was designed with hopes to cultivate positive relationships with a historically traumatic landscape for descendants by engaging local youth with Black foodways, agricultural innovations, and history at Highland. Middle school to high school level students joined us at Highland for 2 fun-filled days where they utilized experiences with food and the environment to learn practical foodways that may help support their families through good and bad times. The campers engaged in conversations with farming experts who looked like them and created experiences with them in the garden and around the garden. They were planting, harvesting, tasting foods. They walked the trails at Highland on a scavenger hunt with the Department of Forestry and their forestry experts. And on the trail, they explored native plants that grew in the wild and talked about hunting and gathering. And they didn't get to taste foods out there because of allergies and risks, but they were able to identify them, and that was part of their scavenger hunt. They learned from William and Mary student, who's also a history student, Alina, about Hannah, an enslaved cook at Highland during Monroe's time there. After learning how Hannah may have cooked over an open fire and gathered food from the garden or in the wild, the fun continued to a local Black-owned commercial kitchen by the name of Beacon Kitchen, in Charlottesville, where the students learned about the ways Black business have monetized their cuisines. And then they prepared on commercial stoves hoe cake, which is a quick snack that enslaved workers in the fields would make while working long days in the field. It was traditionally prepared on a garden hoe, hence the name hoe cake. We taught students cooking traditions that were common in many Black households with minimal resources through the centuries and passed down through generations, such as how to make butter from scratch and deviled eggs. The camp was free to the children and the experience was amazing. Our goal is to extend and continue the summer program in the future. What you see on the screen here to the left is a presentation that the students Sage and Ileana prepared that talks about that experience and how they developed that program, which might be useful to other people who are hoping to engage in these types of conversation at other historical sites such as Highland. And to the right, what you see is some of the students that were in the program. Of course, they were middle schoolers and they were near these chili peppers that were so hot. And we said to them, do not eat the peppers. And they did exactly what any middle schooler would do. And they bit the peppers as quick as they possibly could. All of their faces were on fire. We all saw it coming. We tried to cool them down with water, and it was a great time, but they really enjoyed themselves. So next, if you all can recall from a little earlier in the conversation, I mentioned the history of food and its ability to bring people together. This inspired me to lead in the vision of a fall feast that packaged with it conversations about food traditions and innovation, community, and health. What you see to the right that just moved was the students' exhibits, or that were the poster exhibits, which they gave a small talk on at the event. So on November 1st, Highland hosted the Fall Feast. The event was free and open to the public. So to briefly take you through the day from photos on the left to the right, my students in my course, Reconstructing Heritage, analyzed historical letters, newspapers, census reports, and more to create a poster exhibit that featured the historical facts about the history of an enslaved community there at Highland, which included about 27 of the nearly 50 people who worked for Monroe at Highland. Then there were several exhibits, what you see in the that were tabled in the middle photo, where guests collected swag, information, and important health assessment results, such as that was provided by health professionals from Centera, who tested blood pressure, A1C levels, and provided prostate exams. Also on the tables, we had Piedmont Master Gardeners who provided gardening tips. I even gave a talk about the history of Black-eyed peas and where guests could join me in shelling peas. I discussed the origin of Black-eyed peas being in Africa and the many different cuisines that are now African-American staples, such as Hopping John, made with Black-eyed peas and rice, and Black-eyed peas and okras in the South, and Black-eyed peas and tomatoes in Virginia. And how heritage and memory of Black-eyed peas in my family brings me to the front porch with my grandparents, parents, siblings, aunts, cousins, gathered together for hours on the front porch, together shelling peas, talking, laughing, and working. And we got a chance to feel those same things as everyone found the therapy in shelling peas at the table. And then the event ended with a delicious Black traditional Thanksgiving style meal where everyone ate a Descendant catered meal by Ada's Kitchen and engaged in many conversations. There were a ton of conversations going on. It was wonderful. So I don't want to hold you all too long, and I want to be able to keep the conversation going while we have time. So what I'm going to do is open up this time for questions and answers that you may have for my students or for myself. And let's talk about things.
You can either unmute yourself to do that, or if you raise your hand, I'll keep an eye out for it. See if I see one in the chat. I have a question about okra. Can I ask a question about okra? I did not know that that the seeds could be made into like a coffee-like drink, which I imagine is kind of like chicory. Did you guys get to try it while you were doing this research?
I have not tried it yet. No, I'm not a big coffee drinker in the first place, so I have not expanded my territory towards non-coffee when
Too
I'm not a
bad.
big coffee drinker. Yeah, I know. It would have been a good idea. I tried some
Yeah.
fried okra for the project, but
And what
no.
did you think?
I mean, it's fried, so it's obviously good, but I don't know if I prefer it or like a fried pickle more.
Mm. I saw a hand and then it went down, but if you'd like to still ask your question, please do.
That was Adrian.
Hi, it was me. Um, I had the same question about the coffee. I'd never heard that, and that's one of the most surprising things that I learned so much from your presentation, and that was really shocking to me because I'd never heard that. I had the same question about whether you'd tried okra, but I also wanted to know what you learned from this experience of doing this research, and were there any surprises for you?
I can start. For me personally, okra has been a staple in my house. My grandmother, whether it's fried okra, she actually puts okra in black eyed pea soup, so that kind of combines both of them. But yeah, so that's been a staple for me kind of my whole life. I'm a fan of it fried, however. And then I think the biggest thing that I learned, I did a lot of the research on how okra got from Africa to the Americas. And that to me was the most interesting. All of the different ways. Drew talked about it some too, but like so far as to put the seeds in your hair, to bring it over with you. I thought that was that was the most interesting thing that I encountered while researching.
Yeah, I can go next. Um, I I actually have never had okra, which is kind of a dark confession of mine. I should have tried it for the project purposes, but I'd always seen it on menus and thought it was pretty interesting. I never really realized like the story and the history behind it and how meaningful it really is. I mean, it came from West Africa, and like Drew said, like they got it over here in an unconventional way, and they've carried it on throughout history and then into the modern day today. So I think that's super interesting, and how that they've turned it, into this thing that's still around now, when back then they didn't have really anything to work with and created a long lasting dish. I think that's awesome, and it's a really meaningful story, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and
Nice.
oh,
Go ahead.
all good. I was just basically going to repeat what other people had said, because for me it was both the extent that was gone to bring the crops over from Africa, which is tying into the hair, because there's only so much that they could have possibly brought, and the fact that they chose to do that with the last moments and the limited resources they had speaks both the innovation, which was also present within the dishes themselves because there were limited resources there, but it speaks to that, and it also speaks to the importance of okra as a crop, and also the coffee was interesting as well.
Hey, Sarah.
All right, so my question is for Dr. Armstrong. And you started at one point talking about, 200 years ago with a community separated by slavery. And, part of your work here this year has a lot to do with also that a professional and personal journey in exploring Highland and inviting others to do so. So my question is really about a personal reaction. At Fall Feast, and this is something I haven't asked you in the times we've spoken since then, at Fall Feast, what was familiar to you and what was different to you? I'm interested in the regional differences with the cuisine and the Thanksgiving tradition from
So
what was typical of here and Descendant catered from Virginia.
So one of the things that I thought about when it comes to soul foods and Black foodways, you can go to 5 houses for Thanksgiving and taste the same foods prepared 5 different ways. I think that's the thing that's unique because it's something that comes from the soul. The soul is so unique. So someone might make something and it's savory. Another person might make it and it's sweet. Someone might make it and it's dry. Someone might make it and it's wet. And you'll find those combinations of things both in the North and the South in different ways that people prepare things. But my personal experience is I like to take whatever I enjoy from any place or any household or any cook that's willing to share and infuse it. And I believe that that's how innovation happens. So there's a lot of new food dishes that you can experience at people's house. That's always, which is always one of my favorite things to do at Thanksgiving, which I don't do as much now that I'm older. But when I was younger, I spent Thanksgiving in my car going from house to house to house. I'm surprised that I don't weigh 600 pounds the way that I was inhaling food, and it was so delicious. So I thought the food that we had at Fall Feast was amazing. I really, really enjoyed the ham. I enjoyed it all. Everything was delicious, and and I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed so many things, and I think one of my favorite things was shelling peas. I was thinking, I don't know if anyone is going to know how fun this is, and I don't know if anyone is going to come and sit with me. And I ended up in the corner with actually a lot of my students shelling peas and sharing conversation with me about shelling peas. And then I had to leave because I was asked to do something else. And I looked back and my students were still in the corner shelling peas until they completed shelling the entire bag of black-eyed peas. And one of the things that the way I look at it now, which is different from the way I looked at it then, is I didn't see it as a heritage experience, a tangible experience, or intangible experience, or therapy or mental space. So you could talk when you're shelling peas, or you could just be quiet and enjoy the repetitive action of it. And then it's going to be a purpose that comes up after that. So was that Ramona? Mona, with your hands up?
Uh, I
Hi.
I don't, it may have been, I didn't mean for it to be, but I'm in the process of sending a message to your students.
Okay.
There
Okay.
are two. Oh, there we go.
I just sent,
Mona's question just came up, and it looks like there's another one, Lisa, in the chat after you address Mona's.
Okay, so I see that Mona is asking about my most impactful teaching methods
this is to your
um,
students.
to my students.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before they speak, I want to point out that
Yeah.
my students are not history majors. So the methods that they're using are different from what they would use in their own discipline. So with that, you guys go ahead.
I can speak to just presentations in general. This might not be what the question is going for, but I had typically, whenever I've given presentations in the past, I have had too much words on my slides. That's been an issue. She was very much like, use pictures and you have to talk versus just reading off your slides, which was good. I don't know if that's history or public speaking or research or whatever it is, but that was certainly helpful and will continue to help me as I do more presentations going forward.
Yeah, I can go next. I also think your presentation as a whole kind of has to flow together. I think when we first put it together, we were super choppy, like it would jump from one topic to another to make sure we, hit the important parts of okra and its backstory. But I think it's important to tell a story as a whole instead of just like, hey, we need to meet these requirements of saying this, this, and this. So it's important to like make it all blend and actually give like a whole picture that kind of encapsulates what you're talking about.
And I'll try to speak to class itself as opposed to the presentation, although I could say that as a cop out. But during class, it's she tries to get involved in a discussion and tries to open that up to the class, especially with I don't know how many people know what pole EV is, but it's something that where there's a question that we can all respond to by typing, where it brings up and once we respond, it brings up the most used and the biggest words to So like if she asked how was okra important as a crop to African heritage, then all of the answers to the question would pop up there. And that really opens up well to discussion and guiding that into getting feedback from both sides, because we get a discussion with her and she also gets our perspectives as to the topic, which I always think is a very important thing to do within a classroom setting.
Your
One thing about William and Mary
presentations
students, they
were
know how to
great.
get an A. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mona, go ahead.
I'm just saying, all of your presentations were excellent, very informative, and I really enjoyed them. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
So there was another question in the chat by Patrice Parker. How did the Florida and Virginia families find each other? So that was not my doing. That was that was a lot of research that happened with the Albemarle Historical Society as well as Highland. And then the trip was planned in collaboration with Highland and those entities and the Highland Council of Descendant Advisors. And they got the funding to take a journey to Florida. At the time when they planned this, my family specifically had no idea that we had origins in Virginia. It just so happened around that same time, ancestry showed that my grandmother, my great-grandmother, was born on this plantation, and we had no knowledge of her being born on the plantation. And so, as soon as I saw that, being the anthropologist that I am, I immediately started searching Casabianca. And when I did that, it was connected to all these resources, which included Highland, which included Take Them in Families website. And I could see my family tree on the website, starting with my great grandmother. And I was like, wow, my family must be pretty important if someone has thought so deeply that they want to create a family tree. And it just so happened that they were planning the trip already. So I sent my eldest brother to reach out to both Miranda Burnett and to Highland, and to find out about what was going on, which he loves to do. He loves to talk. So he immediately started digging into things. He felt like he knew everything because that's him. And actually, he was the one who found the record with my grandmother. So it was interesting. So the census have been really important to us in our own family research, because that's how we learned what my grandmother's age actually was versus what we believed it was, because her age changed however young she felt at the time when the census went around. And sometimes she would get a little younger over 10 years. She only aged 5. It just depends on how she felt. And but the census it showed when she was born. She was an 8-month-old baby at the time. So we really, really were excited about that. We learned that they were coming. So of course, we told as much of our family as we could, and anybody that we know. My brother was a big part of creating social media contacts and pages and promoting to the family, hey, we need to take this journey up there. And we also have Joyce, who's also from Florida, on the Highland Advisory Council. And she did the same thing with her family, but she actually grew up in Monticello, or Monticello, as they call it in Florida, which is also Jefferson County. And so now everything is starting to make sense. So we are learning about a presidential history and heritage, and there's mixed feelings. There's this excitement that about, you mean to tell me my family was working for the president? This is a high prestige position. It takes a lot of excellence to be able to work under the presidency, under the creation, under the founding of the country. And then as I was getting all on my high horse, I had to come down immediately, because I'm like, wait a minute, because they were enslaved. And then what does that mean? And how did they feel? So a lot of questions kept coming, and they still continue to come with each adventure, each program, each learning exercise. I enjoy learning with my students, so I enjoy discussion. I enjoy their perspectives. I enjoy watching them grow with the information and having different ways of exploring topics that are typically very complicated for some and uncomfortable for many to talk about. It's a pleasure to see them speak freely and engage often in the discussion. So But yeah, that's how we made the connection to Florida, to Georgia. And at that time, it was amazing. So we met Pastor Berrien and his wife, and his church was very welcoming. I want you all to know that we did have food while we were there, because food is going to always be present. And we've continued a relationship with the pastor. And one of the founding pastors of the church just so happens to be David Strauss, who was also married to my fourth great grandmother, Hannah. So, and the church is still standing. So that's amazing. And there is actually another upcoming event that will happen in February at Casabianca, where people from Virginia are also invited to come and join them as they reconnect. So we connect a lot more. So what has happened over time is, I think we've developed a much closer and tighter bond as a community. And I feel like we're restoring, in a sense, what was lost or what was broken by no choice of their own. So it's been an amazing journey.
I'm mindful of everyone's time, but are you guys, I think we could probably do one more quick question. But that's a pretty good note to end on, if not. Anyone have one final question? Okay. Well, thank you to all of our presenters. I echo the comments that are rolling in. This was extremely impressive and informative. And I thoroughly enjoyed learning from you all. Thank you to those of you who took time out of your Thursday night to join us for this conversation. Thank you to Drew and to Daniel and to George, and thank you, of course, to Lisa. We're very grateful for your vision and your wisdom and your teaching and your research. Thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording now, and I hope everyone has a very pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.